if we are to trust Iran, and I'm assuming that, you would be of the persuasion of saying that we can't trust them yet, correct? Is this something that, how does this lead to a free weapons of mass destruction Middle East?
Well, as far as trust is concerned, I mean, we have a history of 10 years of negotiations with Iran. There's a lot we know about the Iranian nuclear program. They have hidden their military program for years. According to all intelligence estimates, they were working on it at least for about 20 years and are probably continuing till today. So trust is not something that I think comes into the equation when we talk about Iran's nuclear program, really. And this first deal in Geneva is just an interim deal. Even according to President Obama, this is not more than allowing more time on the clock, as the administration put it, giving the P5+1 the time they need to negotiate the comprehensive deal, which is the only deal that we really need to focus on, without enabling Iran to advance its program. So this is a far cry from the deal that the international community is looking for with Iran. So I wouldn't put too much, into this agreement, or the implications of this agreement are just to give time for the comprehensive negotiations.
But it is a step that seems to very much scare the Israeli administration.
Well, the Israeli administration is fearful that this interim agreement is going to turn into a kind of permanent agreement. I would say that's the #1 fear. And I have to say, I mean, over the past weeks, we have been hearing that it's just to give, the 6-month period to negotiate the final deal. Now we see in the terms of the interim deal that they're actually saying this 6-month period can be extended for another 6 months. And we just heard the British Foreign Secretary saying that he hopes there will be a comprehensive deal within a year. So, within the space of several weeks, the 6 months have turned into a year, and that could turn into a year and a half, et cetera, and I think this is what what Netanyahu is fearful of, because this interim deal is, nowhere near the deal that needs to be reached with Iran.
Again, according to the Israeli administration. But what should Israel do in that respect? Because, it is no secret, and according to foreign reports, as we always tend to say, that Israel is trying to prevent Iran from reaching the capability that it actually has. So is that the right way to pursue that? Or does it even have an international stake or claim to say that if, it does not sign certain treaties, international treaties, that it demands Iran to sign?
People are always very quick to draw, an equation between states when you're talking about WMD. But do people think about that same equation when it comes to state behavior in the region towards their own citizens, et cetera, et cetera? When we look at record of behavior for Israel, which has been an assumed nuclear state for over 40 years, it's a record of responsibility, of restraint, of being very low-key, never issuing a nuclear threat. Those are all things that matter. Iran, on the other hand, has been cheating and deceiving the international community for years about its intentions. It joined the NPT, made an explicit commitment to remain non-nuclear, and has been deceiving the international community. Israel opted to stay out of the NPT, probably because it had other things in mind, but those things matter. Iran right now is threatening Israel specifically. It says, the leaders of this regime say over and over and over again, Israel has no place in the Middle East. You will never hear similar rhetoric coming from Israel. So when we look at the situation, everything needs to be taken into account, not just the WMD or suspected WMD.
But so here's the question, Emily. Is this actually a rational solution? Can the area be demilitarized and actually, broken up from its weapons of mass destruction? That's something that can happen.
Well, first of all, what brought Syria to the point where they joined the CWC is exactly pressure. It was the pressure of the threat of military force on the part of the Obama administration. They were threatening to attack the Russians and the Iranians and the Syrians. Probably assumed that even if this went to Congress and Congress gave a red light, there was still, a good chance that Obama might strike. And I think there was a real fear that even this kind of targeted, limited strike could, cause such an upset in Syria that Assad's continued regime would be in danger. And therefore, the Russians stepped forward and said to Assad, most likely, you better sign the CWC, otherwise your regime is in danger. So what do we learn from the Syrian case? Pressure works. And here I would, say in reaction to what was said here about the pressure in Iran and that too much pressure can give the opposite. These arguments have been put forward every time the international community is ahead of a new set of sanctions. We heard it in late 2011 with regard to the biting sanctions. Commentators saying, don't go for those sanctions. You're going to press Iran too far. They'll go crazy. They'll exit the NPT. They'll make a rush for the bomb. And what did we see? Those biting sanctions were put in place, and they're the only reason that the Iranians are right now back at the table. Again, the lesson for the international community is pressure works. And just a final word on the fact that, they always have the knowledge, and therefore you can't stop it. I find this argument very unconvincing. Right. Because the fact that you have the knowledge, we know, everyone has the knowledge, there's knowledge on the internet. That's not a valid argument for saying we can't stop Iran. You can still Assad also has the knowledge, but we all agree that he's basically been stopped because the interests are such that he's probably going to uphold the CWC. He has the knowledge. Why doesn't anybody say, this Syrian deal is not worth the paper it's written on because Assad has the knowledge and he can go back to it? Nobody says that. So why with regard to Iran? Having the knowledge is not the point. The point is that Iran comes to the table because of massive pressure and makes the comprehensive deal that the international community feels satisfied with that will mean they have backed down from their ambitions.